So okay, so let's get to the business side of this, right? There's two big things here, I think. Number one, all right, is the Saudi side. Saudi as a government has crowned this man, Mohammed bin Salman, the prince, the crown prince, is going to be the king. He has the power. So this man has been fully supported by President Trump and Jared Kushner. Really, it's Kushner who's tight with him.
Yeah.
And they've thrown their weight behind him. In fact, they've thrown their weight so much behind him in a way where I believe when King Salman, the king, I believe is his father, was figuring out which son to give the crown to, I believe Trump and Kushner weighed in on that in some way. Where they're like, yeah, we like this guy. You know, we'll be with you guys more if you give it to this son. Maybe they saw something in, glimmer in his eye. I mean,
well, I mean, the president also has a lot of business interests in Saudi Arabia, right? So,
oh, Trump himself.
Yeah, Trump himself.
I didn't know that.
I mean, he's made a comment in the past that he's made a lot of money in Saudi Arabia.
Right.
Now if we ask him, of course, he'll say he doesn't have any interest in
Right.
Saudi Arabia, but chances are he's lying.
Right.
So
What?
he's
Impossible. Not our president.
So he's not going to come down hard
Right.
on the Saudis because it'll impact his business interests.
And so, in addition, well, we'll get to that in a second. So Saudi is got this crown prince, and his goal is to wean them off of oil because I think he sees the future coming of electric cars. It's pretty clear. So wean their country off of it. By 2030, they have this big plan. And so to launch this plan last year, they did something called the FII, Financial Investment Conference of some sort. I forget what it stands for. The first one was last year in the Ritz-Carlton in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. And sure enough, the Treasury Secretary came, Jamie Dimon came, Larry Fink came, Steve Schwarzman from Blackstone came. Those three big names in finance, plus Steve Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, those are the four biggest names in business, basically, in American finance. They went last year. And then after that, they call it Davos in the desert. Okay? So it's basically this big conference. If you want Saudi's billions and billions of dollars and you want to network with, with hobnob with people, go to this conference. And a lot of people did. And then a month later, they turned that same Ritz-Carlton into a jail.
Yeah.
Where the crown prince basically rounded up Prince Walid and other princes and other people and threw them in that Ritz-Carlton as a prison.
Yeah.
Shook them down for billions of dollars under the auspices of these princes took illegitimate money from the government, so we're just taking it back.
Right.
Shook them down, and then not all, but most have now left the Ritz. There's still some people there.
So much for due process, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Right. Guilty until proven innocent. Which, by the way, is the whole Trump point right now.
Right.
Why is Saudi being guilty? Proven guilty until proven innocent? It's like what? Like, have you been paying attention? Anyway, there's no point in arguing that. So, my point with this is you've got another conference happening next week, literally next week, right? This whole Jamal Khashoggi thing happened 2 weeks ago, and then you got Davos in the desert happening right after it, and so we're able to see very clearly, people's behavior around these two events being so close to each other. So the Ritz still has some people there. They're supposed to have this. So the Ritz still has some people imprisoned there, and they're supposed to have this Davos in the desert downstairs while some people are in jail upstairs. Right? It's hilarious. I just love. I'm just picturing Steve Mnuchin going up to the wrong room,
God.
And there's a prince that comes out with 8 strippers. He's like, "What is going on?" Whoa! I thought this was my room. No, this is my prison cell. What? So, Saudi trying to transform, using this conference to transform themselves by the year 2030, wean themselves off of oil, is I think really kind of he's like shooting themselves in the foot, right? Because they've by the way, Saudi has just begun borrowing money on the bond market. They in the last 2 years, just in 2016, they're one of the only countries that was not using the bond markets to borrow money. But in the last 2 years, they've raised $70 billion on the global bond market, in the global bond market. So they borrowed $70 billion to use that money to invest in their infrastructure and whatever else they need to invest in. And they pay a certain interest rate on that money. The cost to insure, credit default swaps, the cost to insure anyone who owns a Saudi bond has gone up 35% since this whole Jamal Khashoggi thing.
Since
Because
then, really.
yeah,
Wow.
just in the last 2 weeks. The moment that guy was supposedly killed, you just see the graph jump.
Huh.
So the cost, basically, to protect yourself, to buy insurance against Saudi not paying their debt, jumped 30% after that. Because I think they're starting to see the country unravel a bit. Right? They're starting to see this crown prince be someone who's unpredictable. The whole Yemen thing. I mean, they're just killing Yemenis. It's crazy how bad it is in Yemen. The Saudis are doing. They kidnapped the Lebanese prime minister earlier in the year, and now this. It's like, dude, what are you doing?
It's not a real sound business environment. You know, I mean, business, the economy, business people like stability and predictability. You know, and when there's no due process, when there are no laws that are consistently applied, you know, it's just not going to work as a business environment. And then the whole IPO of
Aramco.
Yeah, that's gone down the tubes too.
I mean, I think
for now.
Yeah, Goldman and Morgan Stanley were. I think it was Morgan Stanley. I know Goldman was in it. They were so like chomping at the bit for this $100 billion IPO. The U.S. government, Trump and Kushner, was like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna get this IPO," and they totally pulled the rug out from under us.
Yeah. Well, the valuation anecdotally, people seem to think that the valuation is ridiculously high.
Oh, is that
And then
right?
It's not like the Saudis are really going to disclose the typical public company information that you'd see, you know, because I'm sure the numbers probably aren't really legit, or, you know, then all the ownership interests of, you know, who owns the company will be exposed, and I'm sure there are a lot of people that don't want that information made public. So I don't know. We'll see if it happens. I don't think it will.
It doesn't feel like it, but you better believe they hung that carrot. They swung that carrot out there for the Americans. You know, like, oh yeah, we're gonna do this Aramco thing, and then like, oh, we changed our mind.
Yeah, right.
It's like, whoa, you know.
Yeah.
So I mean, and still with all of that, right? With all Trump is still supporting, you know, this, and so now the second thing, right? So the first thing is just Saudi and their business environment. Their bonds are risky. The whole country and investing in the country is risky. The whole thing just feels shaky. But the second part of this is a story about American business. Trump right now is saying maybe it's rogue killers the way MBS is saying. Maybe it wasn't these 15 guys in the bone saw. Okay, let's go with that, President Trump.
Yeah.
And so he's saying, so as a result, I'm not going to just pull, for example, we're selling them $100 billion worth of military equipment. He's like, I'm not going to pull that. Raytheon and Boeing and Lockheed Martin, they need that money. It's like, okay, we see where your values are. Money is way more important to you than are people getting bone sawed when they go to Saudi Arabia because they look the wrong way at someone. You know what I mean? So that's his value. Now, he is still sending Steve Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, to Davos in the desert next week. This man is still going, and he's, which I can't. I'm like, I'd be like pissing in my pants if I'm the Treasury Secretary and you're making me go to Saudi. Like, I don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
If I make a mistake, you know.
Yeah, I mean that's a tough one. I haven't really thought through it that much. I mean, certainly, I mean, I don't know how anybody can say some rogue killer. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense to me.
They're just starting to change the story now, saying it's an interrogation gone wrong. Hey, say that like 2 weeks ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the best way to sanction them, I don't know. I haven't really thought through that.
Well, I mean, so American business decided for America what they're going to do. This made headlines, and it should make friggin' headlines. And I think this is what I've been feeling the last few years, and the big point I want to make on this podcast is the world's changing from a value perspective. It doesn't feel like values are emanating from the White House necessarily anymore, or just from Washington. Jeez, even the Senate and the House, right? And even the Supreme Court now, it's all just looking shaky. It feels like values are shifting somehow to American business, which is weird, but it's not. Because the truth is, our power rests in our economic power. That's really where everything emanates from. And who's our economic power? It's American business. So Jamie Dimon of J.P. Morgan Chase, Larry Fink of BlackRock, and of BlackRock, and Steve Schwarzman of Blackstone. These are the three biggest CEOs on Wall Street. All right, all three were calling each other up the day before, and they're like, "Hey, are you going to this thing? I don't know. Are you going? I don't know. Are you going?" And so Jamie Dimon called up their contact over in Saudi and was like, "Yo, you need to postpone Davos in the desert because with this whole Jamal Khashoggi thing, we feel weird going over there. Can you please postpone?" The guy says to Jamie, "Thanks for the call. No, we ain't postponing anything." Jamie's like, "All right, I'm out." Larry Fink and Steve Schwarzman gave them a deadline of 6 a.m. the next day. And Saudi said, "Nope, keeping it on." The next day, 6 a.m., those two guys pulled out. And so you got the three biggest CEOs on Wall Street pulling out of this Davos in the desert. And that says a lot.
Yeah.
I get it that it might not be the best business environment, but still, JP Morgan Chase makes billions off of Saudi. I know this for a fact. I used to work there. They've got an office of like 75 people there.
Yeah.
You know?
Although, looking at it from the other end, I mean, I think the government is certainly impacting the values in that I don't think the Saudis would have chopped up Jamal if President Trump hadn't been saying things like the press is the enemy, I mean, where he's just shockingly disparaging the press and saying that I don't know if he said they're traitors or whatever, but he's made the press to be the enemy of the American people, and so it's a lot easier for other world leaders to then think that they can get away with treating the press in a different way. I think it sends a huge message to the rest of the world when you say that the press is the enemy of the American people. It's like, well, maybe I can chop up this guy,
I'm quickly having second thoughts about this podcast. It's kind of a little bit of a journalistic thing, you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
We're gonna end this show right now.
Okay.
A little late for that. Thanks for the invite.
So those are the two big things I'm seeing is like just for Saudi from their own perspective as a country, business wise, just all question marks around them. There's a big shift happening there, and that has big ripple effects in the world. The second thing, which I think is a bigger thing, is American business taking the lead on American values.